Part 104. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1031. Chapter 1031 Hope and Despair. Li Lauer and Mr. Wen went downstairs and got on the carriage. Mr. Wen clapped his hands and laughed. "My uncle just scolded me really well, it was fun to hear it." Li Lauer smiled bitterly. "I just cursed a few words, but Fu Niuer slapped her in the palace. I don't know why those people bullied her. This girl has never wanted to cause trouble for the family. She must be like this today." Furious, Mr. Wen frowned and said, "Muju went to Jiangbei, otherwise you can ask him." "That's right, this guy left at the wrong time." Li Lauer was also anxious. Mr. Wen advised, "If you wait a little longer, the princess will definitely send a message home. And the princess is obviously not at a disadvantage, so we don't have to worry too much." "That's true," Li Lauer softened his expression and said with a smile, "It's good that our children didn't suffer any disadvantages." As the two of them talked, the carriage arrived at the Earl's mansion. Wanner was already anxious at home. She was at home every day and rarely walked out. She didn't know what was going on in the palace. But it happened that her natal mother was having tea with her friends today. As soon as she heard about this, she immediately sent someone to send the news. Wanner wanted to go to the palace to see her sister-in-law, but she was also worried that if she handled the matter wrongly in such a stormy situation, it would cause trouble for her sister-in-law and the family. She could only send someone to find Jie Huan and ask him to find out more information at the restaurant. Fortunately, Li Lauer and Mr. Wen came back at this time. Wanner almost met her savior and rushed to the front yard to ask her elders to find a solution. Li Lauer is extremely satisfied with this daughter-in-law. When his son is away, his daughter-in-law has to take care of the house, deal with people, and take care of the children. It is very hard, but she does everything properly and never makes mistakes. At this moment, he quickly told the story again, emphasizing that the good news was not at a disadvantage. Wanner was finally relieved and could breathe a sigh of relief. By chance, the boy at the door came to report. "Uncle, Mr. Wen, the eldest young lady, and Miss Beizu from the Jiao family are here to visit." Orb. Everyone was very happy, and Wanner even went to welcome Beizu in person. You must know just now that Beizu is Ji Yin's comrade in arms, and no one knows the truth of the matter better than her. Beizu also lived up to their expectations. He explained everything clearly from beginning to end, and even danced with joy, wishing to recreate the famous scene for them. In the end, Beizu left a letter with good news, and then went home satisfied with the 2 boxes of snacks prepared by Wanner. Li Lauer and Mr. Wen took turns reading the letter. Mr. Wen really couldn't laugh or cry, he said. Our Fu Niuer also said that she didn't want to cause trouble to the family, otherwise she would beat them up one by one. Li Lauer nodded and sighed. The last thing the family wants is for the child to wrong her. But in this situation, the child has been living in the palace for a long time. How can she live her life as she pleases? I think it is a good thing that she lost her temper like this today. Mr. Wen advised, "Fu Niuer is a smart child, so you don't need to worry too much. In a few months, things will be settled, and then you don't need to worry about this child. The family has no requirements for her marriage. From now on, she can just make herself happy." "That's true," Li Lauer said with a smile, "we wish she would not marry, or would like to find a wife." Wanner was also relieved and went to the kitchen to prepare meals with the cook. "If something like this happened, I would definitely have to come back for dinner at the family dinner in the evening." Sure enough, as soon as it got dark, the family members rushed back, and even Lu's Haihang came to join in the fun. The Earl's mansion rarely became lively, which made Yuan stay in the front yard, sitting in Jie Huan's arms, refusing to go to bed early. Luoan Academy is still some distance away from the new capital, so the news is inevitably delayed. But at dinner time, many students also knew about it. After all, he is a young man who is always playful and competitive. It is common to enjoy snow in winter and flowers in summer. He often holds poetry gatherings and the like. The students were not interested in the fact that the summer banquet in the palace had become a slapping party, but they were talking a lot about the two new poems. Some people like it and praise it. Some people don't like it, saying that the rhetoric is not gorgeous enough. But these are outsiders, and it doesn't matter if they judge good or bad. Brother Cat, Guo Wenhao, Zhaiman, and Jiaja gathered in the small courtyard on the back street, but they happily opened the wine jar and loudly congratulated the girl for her great power. Haha, she deserves to be my sister. Anyone who dares to bully my sister in this world will probably never be born again. Brother Cat was so proud that he shouted, "It's a shame that I'm not in the palace today, otherwise I would definitely be knocked down." Playing gongs and drums to cheer up my sister. Jimin and Jiuji also clapped the table and applauded. Jimin shouted, "Just thinking about it makes me feel happy. Those ladies are so blind that they actually want to join forces to bully Fu Niuer. Haha, I'm afraid my intestines are full of regrets now." Guo Wenhao was still taciturn, but he held the wine glass and took a sip, and the smile never left his lips. Xiuji was more lively, dancing and saying, "There is a boy in our school who actually said that the princess sister is so fierce that she will not be able to marry in the future. Humph, he is really carefree. There are many people who want to marry the princess's sister, so the princess's sister doesn't have to worry about marrying. No big deal, I'll marry the princess's sister, haha, my dad and grandpa will probably pass out from joy." Jimin slapped his brother on the head and shouted, "If you want to marry me, it's my turn." "It's your turn. It's a pity that the princess sister is so smart, she probably doesn't like us." After that, he looked at Guo Wenhao, his eyes lit up, and he said, "I think Hazi is very suitable. There are no elders in the clan. If the princess sister marries and becomes the head of the family, she will not be wronged. Hazi is better at studying than us. In the future I can definitely get the top spot in the exam." Guo Wenhao's face instantly turned red, and he didn't even let go of his ears. He quickly waved his hands and replied stutteringly, "No, no, I'm not worthy of the princess." Brother Cat also quickly stopped him, "Don't make fun of my sister. My sister has her own ideas, and we don't care. Besides, our family is not willing to let my sister marry outside, so we might want to recruit a new wife." Jimin and Jiaja shrugged, and they laughed and stopped talking about it. However, Guo Wenhao lowered his head to drink tea, and the light in his eyes went out little by little. He shoulders the important task of shining a glorious family name and revitalizing the family, so it is impossible for him to get married. Otherwise, the grandfather, parents and uncles under Jiquan will jump out and come to settle accounts with him. In the small courtyard of the Tang family in the academy, Mr. Tang rarely asked the scholar to prepare 2 dishes for him, poured a pot of wine, and started to drink it himself. When he was half drunk, he leaned back in his chair and muttered, "When such a tough woman enters the Mu family, there will be times when the unfilial son will regret it." He didn't know that Muju, the unfilial son, had now transformed into a simple and honest young man. He was wearing a grey military uniform, holding a long knife handle in his hand, and was walking in the team escorting the army rations. The scorching sun above our heads was scorching the earth, and it was also scorching the hundreds of carts and 1,000 men and horses of the grain delivery team. A middle-aged man wiped the sweat from his head and complained, "The weather is so hot. When will it rain? It's best to take a quick shower, otherwise everyone will be roasted into dried meat." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1032. Chapter 1032. People in the world don't know what's going on in the world. Muju untied the water bag from his waist and handed it over, smiling and saying, "Brother Wu, have a drink of water." The man surnamed Wu wanted to grin, but he hit a cracked hole at the corner of his mouth. He made a sound of pain, and he didn't care to be polite. He opened the copper mouth of the water bag, took 2 small sips carefully, and then handed it to Muju. "Thank you, Brother Mu. As a big-bellied man, I have already drank all the water I packed this morning." Muju waved his hand, wiped the water bag, and tied it back around his waist. The man surnamed Wu seemed to have been moisturized by the water and became energetic. He gave Muju an elbow and joked in a low voice, "Brother Mu, isn't this water bag given by some girl?" Muju smiled and replied, "Brother Wu is awesome, can you tell from this?" The man surnamed Wu laughed loudly and said proudly, "Of course, I also walked through the rivers and lakes back then, and I have sharp eyes. It's just that the barbarians attacked our Tianwu, and I protected my wife, children, and my mother all the way to the south. I no longer have any ambitions. After all, I can't leave my mother, my wife, and my children without anyone to rely on. Otherwise, boy, I would be a famous knight in the world now." After saying that, he grabbed the scabbard and held a few sword flowers. The veteran walking next to him was almost touched by his scabbard, and he couldn't help laughing and scolding, "Wu does why, don't fool me, little brother. With your little 3-legged cat kung fu, if you encounter the bandit roadhog, you will give it to others. Feed the knife." Wu does why was unconvinced and snorted coldly, "If you don't believe me, just wait and see who will save your lives if something happens." After saying that, he turned around and continued to ask Muju, "Brother Mu, why did you come to deliver food this time? The family lacks money to find a wife." Muju nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, Brother Wu is right. The girl I am betrothed to is the best in the world, so the betrothal gift should be more. Not only can I make some money by running the strip, but I can also look at her father for her. Her father is under the command of the Marquis, and she is worried about him at home. Hey, good boy, you are here to please my father-in-law." Wu does why laughed loudly, patted Muju on the shoulder vigorously, and shouted, "When we get to the place, I will go with you to see your father-in-law, okay? After a drink, I will praise you as a flower and make your father-in-law wish to marry your daughter to you immediately." Muju smiled and thanked him, "Okay, if Brother Wu can persuade my father-in-law, then I can help you drink for the rest of your life." Ouch, that sounds pretty loud. Then it's settled. Wu does why was still about to speak, but the team in front suddenly became lively. He hurriedly ran to take a look, and when he came back, he carried a bucket of water and shouted. He said, "Brothers, come and drink water. There is a well at the entrance of the village ahead that is not dry." The soldiers in the 2 carts at the front and back were all very happy. They came forward one after another, filled their water bags with water, and drank heavily from the bamboo cups they brought with them, shouting that they were happy. Muju glanced around, his eyes flashing slightly. There is indeed a small village not far ahead, but it is already noon, and there are more than a dozen houses in the village but not a single chimney is smoking. This is really weird. At this time, Wu does why was afraid that he would not be able to grab a drink of water, so he pulled his water bag and drank most of it for him. Muju took a sip, then wiped his mouth and spit it into his sleeve. Ecstasy, the water has the smell of ecstasy. This stuff is the main ingredient for making Mongolian sweat medicine in Jianghu. It has a bitter taste when sprinkled in water. Therefore, generally when Jianghu gangsters want to plot against anyone, they will add it to strong wine and use the pungency of the wine to cover up the bitter taste. The bitter taste of this bucket of water is very light, and ordinary people can hardly taste it. It can be seen that the efficacy of the medicine has been greatly diluted. It is estimated that the soldiers will faint for about half an hour if they drink it, and there will be no danger to their lives. Could it be said that the person who administered the medicine did not want the lives of the grain transport team? Muju pretended to take a few sips of water, and while Wu Daziwai was delivering the bucket, he said to the soldiers next to him, "I'm going to make it easier." The soldier pulled up his sleeves to fan himself warmly and said casually, "Go." Muju walked around the carriage and saw that no one was paying attention, so he got under the carriage. After a while, Wuda's wife came back and asked, "Where is brother Mu?" The soldier wanted to answer, but suddenly he held his head and shook it. Wuda's wife was so frightened that he held up a hand. He still wanted to speak, but he also felt that the world was spinning. In the blink of an eye, the previously lively convoy fell down with a crackle. Some people know that something bad is going on and want to draw the sword, but they only get half of it. Muju lay under the car, clawing at the board, and held his breath. Sure enough, after a while, 3 or 4 soldiers ran over from the front of the motorcade and whispered this. "Have you all fainted?" They all fainted. I saw it with my own eyes and almost drank water. That's okay, send the signal quickly and ask our family to come and transport the food away. They deliberated for a few words and then lit a cannon. The cannon shot directly into the air and exploded with a loud bang that could be heard clearly within a 10-mile radius. Soon, the rumble of horse hooves was heard, and Muju, who was hiding under the car, heard it especially clearly. But as he listened, his eyes widened in surprise. Why are there 2 teams of people coming? A man coming from the west, a group of 200 to 300 people. The other team arrived from the north, all with fast horses and heavy riding. The dozen traitor soldiers waiting outside were even more surprised than Muju when they saw the dust and smoke billowing from 2 directions. I haven't heard that the personnel to respond to them will come in 2 directions. After a while, the cavalry from the north arrived first. The big words "Northern Expedition" were written on the flag, causing the team coming from the west to turn around and run away immediately. 4 or 5 traitor soldiers cursed loudly and tried to run away. Unable to wait any longer, Muju got out from under the car, kicked one of the soldiers down, and then jumped out and strangled the neck of another soldier. The heavy cavalry coming from the north also split into 2 groups, chasing the team from the west and heading straight for the convoy. Li Laosi took the lead and ran from the front of the convoy to the back. Seeing that there was no smell, he breathed a sigh of relief. Just when he heard the cannon, he guessed that something was wrong. If he had waited another quarter of an hour for the grain truck to be hijacked, he would certainly have been able to catch more people. But the grain transport team could not afford to suffer any damage if it cost hundreds of lives. They are all father and mother, and their loved ones who remember every day cannot be damaged. He definitely does not want to be damaged. At this time, not far away, a soldier transporting food shouted loudly, "Fourth master, help quickly, I caught 2 traitors." They drugged the well water at the entrance of the village. Li Laosi wanted to step forward, but was stopped by the soldiers. "General, no, the grain transport team has fallen. Only this kid didn't fall for the trick. I'm afraid it's a scam." Li Laosi smiled and waved his hand and ordered, "Don't worry, my family. Help him tie up the 2 traitors and wait for me to interrogate them." Having said that, he immediately stepped forward and asked, "Muju, why are you here? Aren't you supposed to be in Zindu?" Seeing the 2 traitors being held down and tied with ropes, Muju raised his hand to pull off the disguise on his face and responded, "Last time the army rations were destroyed, the second master and Mr. Wen both suspected that there was a traitor, so let me help General Li Yong investigate. I guessed that the food delivery this time would definitely be plotted, so I came to take a look. I didn't expect that I was right." At this time, several soldiers who were tying up the traitor suddenly shouted in alarm. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1033. Chapter 1033, If you can't help yourself, death will be a big deal. Muju took one step forward, but it was still too late. The two traitor soldiers had bitten their tongues, and bright red blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths, which was shocking. Several soldiers subconsciously let go, feeling a little at a loss for a moment. The two traitors glanced at Muju one last time, with a somewhat complicated look in their eyes. Li Laosi frowned and ordered a few soldiers, tear off their clothes and see if there are any marks on them. The soldiers hesitated for a moment, but finally got busy. Unfortunately, both of them were seen clearly from head to toe, but there were still no marks. At this time, the team that had just been separated to pursue the team also came back. The captain who led the team reported, "General, those hundreds of people ran into the mountains and forests and failed to catch them. But the two traitors behind were caught, but, they were all." He bit his tongue and committed suicide. Li Laosi waved his hand and said, "Forget it, the two caught here are also dead. These people are rare loyal, but their master doesn't know if they feel sorry for them losing their lives for this." The captain returned with no success and was a little angry. "Consider them lucky, otherwise they will be tortured to get the bad guys behind." Muju looked at the captain and looked familiar, so he took another look. Li Laosi remembered it and introduced them to them. "This captain is Jia Dun, Beizu's cousin." After saying that, he pointed to Muju and said, "This is the princess's guard Muju, who has just come from Zindu." Jia Dun smiled broadly at that time, his eyes lit up, and he said repeatedly, "Brother Mu, let's have a chat later. I have been out for several months, and I don't know how my family is doing." Muju nodded and said with a smile, "Okay, Brother Jia, your family is fine, don't worry about it." Jia Dun felt relieved a little, and Le Dion ran to help the soldiers fetch water, and splashed water on the unconscious grain transport soldiers one by one. Then, he led people into the village and released the villagers who were trapped in the yard. The villagers were lucky and no one was killed. Li Laosi asked the soldiers to dress the dead traitor and dig a hole for burial. A few soldiers were reluctant and complained, "We can just let these rot, why bury them? We are fighting in the front and keeping the whole Tianwu safe." No one is grateful, but they are trying every possible means to destroy our rations. They are just a bunch of white-eyed wolves. Muju added inadvertently, "It's better to bury them properly. These people can't help themselves." The soldiers didn't say anything anymore. They just complained a few times because it was a big deal for a person to die. No one could do anything to throw the body here, exposed to the sun and wild beasts. Li Laosi narrowed his eyes, motioned for Muju to go farther away with him, and then asked in a low voice, "Have you found any clues about the people behind this in Zindu? Do you know who ordered these people?" Muju shook his head and nodded, and responded, "We captured a few people in Kyoto, but they were all fools who were used as cover. When something happened, I stuffed a few more people in, punished them all, and sent them to prison. Went to the southwest to eat sand." Having said that, he told the good news and the third princess that they were stopped at the palace gate. As expected, Li Laosi was furious, "These are bullying my daughter while I'm not here. When I go back, I'll kill them all on the top of the city with one arrow." Muju quickly smiled and said, "Don't worry, fourth master, they have been punished. They will have to do hard labor for the rest of their lives, which is considered worse than death." Li Laosi barely suppressed his anger and asked again, "You have a smart mind. Tell me, do you have any other discoveries?" Muju pointed at the two traitors and said in a low and inaudible voice, "Four masters, these people just thought that we were all unconscious, so they gathered together to discuss it for a few words. I heard that two of them were from southwest Fanchinj. Accent. The place where I studied before was right next to Fanchinj, so I am very familiar with it and I can't hear it wrong. Fanchinj." Li Laosi looked full of doubts. "This Fanchinj sounds familiar, okay." His eyes suddenly widened, "You mean, impossible. Muju shrugged and sneered, how is it impossible? Everything is possible. Everything depends on whether it is profitable. Li Laozi disagreed, this matter is of great importance. I want to report it to the Marquis, and the other party has no reason to target our northern expedition. Muju said no more and said, I will go with you to see the Marquis. When the time comes, I will say one more thing so that you will not think so. Li Laozi wanted to ask more questions, but was interrupted by a loud voice. Brother Mu. Brother Mu, it turned out that Wu Dazhuai and others were rescued. Wu Dazhuai was still thinking about his little brother Muju and started shouting at the top of his lungs from the front and back of the car. Muju told Li Laozi and walked over. Brother Wu, I'm here. Wu Dazhuai stared blankly at the ruffian and brilliant boy smiling in front of him, unable to react for a moment. The clothes and pants are the same, the voice is the same, but the appearance is completely different. Muju pulled him away, walked to a distance, and whispered, Brother Mu, I am the bodyguard of the Marquis. This time I am disguised as the food delivery team, just to protect the food delivery team's safety. Previously, for the mission, I have something to hide, please don't be angry, Brother Wu. I'm not angry, Wu Dazhuai slapped Muju on the shoulder, grinning with his big white teeth. You are really capable, you are actually the Marquis's bodyguard. I told you that you were extraordinary, but I didn't expect you to be so powerful. Just now I thought you were killed by those guys who stole food, and I was even more afraid that you were. His words were not finished, but Muju also understood. After all, he found an excuse and left before everyone fainted, so he should be suspected of being a traitor. Haha, Brother Wu, don't worry. Whoever is the traitor, I can't be the traitor. Thanks to you for taking care of me all the way. In this way, when you return to Zindu, when you have free time, you can go to Cyclamen restaurant and leave a message. I will bring you the best wine and food from Cyclamen and have a good meal. Haha, okay, I know Cyclamen, it is the most expensive and delicious restaurant. Big Brother will definitely take advantage of you and eat and drink to your heart's content. Wu Dazhuai is a braggart, his ability is average, but he is also really generous and generous. Now that the little brother has nothing to do, and he even made an appointment to have a drink later, he feels happy. Soon, the team was tidied up and back on the road. This place is still more than 300 miles away from the Northern Expeditionary Army camp. Everyone traveled day and night and arrived in 4 days. Let's talk about Zindu. Due to the drought this year, food production will definitely be reduced. There is some depression in and outside the city, and life seems to have lost a lot of vitality. The noble lady entered the palace for the banquet and left the palace crying, which added some laughter to the new capital and made it lively for several days. The opinions of all parties are also mixed. But Princess Kangol is not to be bullied, this consensus is engraved in everyone's heart. Those who have daughters at home will all tell her privately for a long time that if they meet her outside, they must not provoke Princess Kangol. Those who have young children at home are even more careful about it. They cannot marry such a powerful daughter-in-law. Be careful when the new daughter-in-law comes in, and the whole family will be strangled. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1034. Chapter 1034, One family does not speak 2 languages. The purpose of good news has been achieved, although it has some obstacles to reputation. But she doesn't care either, it's better to be feared than bullied. What's more, she doesn't have to worry about getting married. But after a night of pride, the third princess finally remembered that Jiyan was not engaged yet, and began to worry that her good sisters would not be able to get married. When she got up in the morning, she sat under the eaves and sighed. If I had known this, I would have asked Kaiun to start the fight yesterday. Why would you want to compete with others? Now I am afraid that in Zindu, I will not be able to find a good family who dares to marry you. Jiyan was amused by her and laughed, and replied, don't worry, at worst, I will marry in Quanzhou, and no one there will know that I have a bad temper. Oh, this is also a good idea. The third princess actually took it seriously and smiled happily. When the time comes, I will add more makeup to you so that you can marry in style. Jiyan doesn't want the topic to keep wandering around getting married. She hasn't had enough of her wonderful years. Just when he was about to change the subject, a young suddenly came to report, Princess, Prince Lu is here. Jiyan's eyes flashed, and she stood up and said, Brother Lu is probably thinking about you and came here to express his condolences. I won't disturb you anymore. I happened to not sleep well last night, so I'm going to catch up on my sleep. Go, go, let someone bring you food at noon. The third princess waved her hand, then picked up her skirt and went to pick her up. Jiyan turned around and returned to the side hall, closed the small door, gave Shuiling Shuiyun a few words, and then she entered the space. The jade melons that were planted before have matured. Just wait for the garden to open in Broken Gold Beach in the next few days, and the origin of these jade melons will be revealed. At that time, some should be given to the Lu family, the Academy, the Jiao family, the Gu family, the Ho family, and the palace. The little fox had already opened a jade melon, his little head almost stuck into the melon gourd, and he was eating happily. The little green snake rarely came to the side and took a few bites. It was almost dyed red by the melon juice. Jiyan also shared a piece, and while eating, he chatted with the little fox and the little snake. Of course, she was basically the one doing the talking, but the little fox also chirped occasionally, and the little green snake spit out messages, which was considered a very positive compliment and response. In the main hall next to her, the third princess blushed slightly and ordered the maids to bring Lu Zong's favorite tea and snacks. Lu Zong seemed to ask casually, where is the princess? Why are you not with the princess? Yesterday's summer banquet, I heard that you had another quarrel. The third princess was excited when she mentioned this, and said with a smile, Brother Lu, you were not there, so you might not know. Jiyan was simply too powerful at the time. Those girls were so arrogant, but they couldn't say a word because of Jiyan, and they were blocked by Jiyan. Shui Lingfan screamed, ha ha ha, it was so enjoyable. Mr. Lu also smiled and responded, the princess's 2 poems have been praised by many people outside. They are indeed good. The third princess nodded, her expression full of pride, as if she was the one who composed the poem. I didn't expect that she would be good at baking snacks and cooking while watching Jiyan, and she was even good at doing business. I didn't expect that she could also compose poetry. Lu Zong raised his hand to pour tea for the third princess, and then asked, where is the princess? Have you left the palace? No, maybe I didn't sleep well last night. I just heard you were coming, so I went back to catch up on my sleep. The third princess waved her hands carelessly, took a sip from the teacup, and felt it was sweeter than usual. Lu Zong lowered his head, his eyes blocking all the emotions in his eyes. After a while, he said, the melon garden in Sujintan should be open soon. When I come again, I will bring you 2 jade melons. The third princess smiled. Shy, he nodded quickly and responded, okay. Jiyan also said that he would take me to the melon garden to eat as much as he wanted. But my father has been restraining me recently and won't let me leave the palace. As she spoke, she felt a little frustrated and complained in a low voice. Suddenly it felt like everything inside and outside the palace was in chaos, and life seemed to be noisy. Lu Zong drank tea and calmly advised, it doesn't matter where there is chaos, the princess just needs to live well in Highland Palace. The third princess became more and more shy and asked, Brother Lu, my father wants us to get married as soon as possible. What do you think? After finishing speaking, she was afraid that Lu Zong would misunderstand, so she quickly added, if you are not in a hurry, you can wait a few more years. Even even if my father said so, I would not agree. Luzon did not raise his head and responded after a while, of course I obey the emperor's will. The third princess thought he agreed with what he said, so the corners of her mouth were raised happily. At the same time, Wanner was also entertaining Mrs. Jaer and Mrs. Lu in the Earl's mansion. Mrs. Jaer brought a lot of thank you gifts, none of them expensive, but all practical. She took Wanner's hand and said repeatedly, "Wanner, when you meet the princess, you must help your aunt to thank her properly. My silly girl Bezu, I always worry about her wherever she goes, for fear of being bullied. This time I entered the palace and somehow got into the eyes of that dead girl from the Lu family in order to protect the orb. The princess competed with her in writing poems. Now everyone is gossiping. I feel really bad about it." Wanner smiled and comforted her, "Auntie, don't say that. As a sister-in-law, I dare not say that I know the princess very well, but I can see clearly. The princess treats the treasure as her own sister. The princess actually has a good temper, but she is very protective of her shortcomings. It's just that she doesn't know, but the orb was in front of her eyes yesterday, so she wouldn't let it suffer." Mrs. Lu also laughed and said, "Yes, the princess's child is the most recognized. Even though she doesn't meet me often, whenever there is a new snack in Bianjian, she will have someone send me a box early. I am so envious even in my dreams. If I had such a biological daughter, I would rather lose 10 years of my life. It's a pity that I am not so lucky." "Haha, you can find a good daughter-in-law and treat her like your own daughter." Mrs. Jaer laughed, "It would be better if the princess married into the family." Mrs. Lu quickly waved her hand, No, it's not that I am a humble mother, but my 2 sons together are not worthy of the princess." Everyone laughed, and Mrs. Lu took Wanner's hand and told her, "People like these in Zindu have nothing to do all day long, so they just want to talk a few gossips. If you are out and about and hear people gossiping, don't worry, you may make yourself angry. If you are really angry, just tell me and my aunt will help you find a way to vent your anger. Whose family doesn't have some dirty things, aren't they willing to talk about it? Let them also be the protagonists when the time comes." Only then did Wanner understand Mrs. Liu's original intention of coming here today, and she felt extremely grateful and warm in her heart. "There are not many people walking around in my family now, but every one of them is solid and reliable. She has no mother-in-law, and her grandmother-in-law and aunts are not at home either. She occasionally feels uneasy and has no one to rely on. Fortunately, her sister-in-law is a good person and helps a lot. Now there is another elder who can help her." After thinking about it like this, Wanner said, "Auntie, speaking of which, I really have something to entrust you with." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1035. Chapter 1035, The Melon Garden opens despite repeated calls. Mrs. Lu was curious and said with a smile, "Tell me what it is." Wanner responded, "It's not a big deal. My natal family arranged a marriage for my younger brother. The other party is from a very low-key scholarly family. But I have been married for a few years and rarely participate in the gatherings of little girls, so I have never seen that girl. My mother is in poor health and rarely goes out, so she was in a bit of trouble for a while. After all, adding new people is a big deal. You have to find out clearly about the person and appearance of the other person before making a decision." "Ah, it's easy." Mrs. Lu agreed immediately, "Tell me the girl's family background and name. I have many wives who are familiar with me. The girls in their families are all in their teens. There are always a few that I know of. When the time comes, I will find out the exact information and I will ask someone to tell you. You should also go to my house with your child in your arms. Don't stay bored at home every day." Mrs. Jaer also said, "Last time I went back, why didn't my sister-in-law tell me? I can also help find out." However, The other party is from a scholarly family, so it is more appropriate for the Lu family's sister-in-law to come forward. Warner nodded quickly and explained the girl's family background and ranking in detail. After a few more gossips, Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Gio were about to say goodbye and go home. Warner asked them to stay for dinner, but they refused. Warner could only ask someone to prepare a basket, and each of them gave a jade melon. The jade melon is about the size of a pottery pot. It is green all over and has a faint sweet fragrance. No matter how you look at it, it is very pleasant. Mrs. Lu was surprised and said, "Is the melon garden in Sujintan open now?" Warner smiled and nodded, "Yes, Auntie. This was sent by the village chief this morning. My father and Mr. Wen also know about it. They plan to go to the palace tomorrow to offer melons, and then open the garden and sell them to the outside world." Mrs. Gia reached out and patted the jade melon. She was extremely surprised and laughed softly, "Then we can eat this year's jade melon earlier than the emperor." Mrs. Lu also smiled, "I will definitely talk to my old man when I get back. He is like a child now. I'm afraid he will be happy for several days because of this. My old lady is the same." Mrs. Gia was even more happy. Her old lady often complains that her mouth feels bitter recently. It is probably because of the heat and anger. If she eats a few pieces of jade melon, she will be cured immediately. Warner asked someone to cover the basket with a piece of coarse cloth, and then sent it to the carriage of the two of them. Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Gia came in joy and left happily. After returning home, needless to say, they all made the old man smile. On the second day, Li Laoer and Mr. Wen took the village chief and Lu Biatu, loaded a cart full of jade melons and golden fruits, swaggered through the market, and delivered them to the palace. The people inside and outside Zindu have long been accustomed to the Li family's unique way of announcing. So, the melon garden in Rujintan opened, and the news spread almost instantly. The children at home are jumping around and clamoring to eat the melon. Whenever there is any hesitation in the family, the children want to roll all over the floor. Old men and women love their grandsons, and in this scorching heat, they are also looking forward to eating a piece of melon to quench their thirst. So, if the pillars of each family cannot grab a few jade melons, they do not respect the elderly and do not love the young. Unavoidable, they took their slaves and braved the scorching sun and hurried onto the road to Broken Gold Beach, sweating profusely along the way. But no matter how hot it was, they didn't dare to stop for fear that it would be too late and they wouldn't even be able to buy melon vines. In previous years, if you couldn't buy a good melon with broken gold, you could always buy it elsewhere. Although the quality is not as good as that of Broken Gold Beach, it is not as sweet and not as watery, but it can still satisfy your cravings. This year, the weather has been unfavorable. The drought has started in spring and now, the melon vines elsewhere have all dried up. The few jade melons that occasionally grow are pitiful. Only Sujintan, the 4 villages together numbered hundreds of people, and even hired hundreds more people, adding up to a labor force of more than 1,000, to dig canals from Jiangchizi, and divert the river water to the vicinity of Sujintan, and then buckets of picket to the field and irrigate the melons one by one. The busy scene at the beginning attracted many people in the city to watch the fun. It can be said that the jade melons of Broken Gold Beach are now a veritable rarity. Everyone is ready for the price to double. But when I arrived at Huayuan, I heard that the price had only increased by 30%. If I exchanged it for grain, I could buy it first, and even the price had only increased by 20%. This increased portion is the hard-earned money of the villagers and employees. Food will naturally be distributed to villagers and hired workers. On average, a jade melon costs 6 or 7 taels of silver. If you can afford to eat like this, you must be a rich person. Rich people have food stored in their homes, and it doesn't matter even if there is no harvest this year. Hence, the jade melons on Broken Gold Beach were picked quickly and put on carriages. Large amounts of grain were also sent to Sujintan one after another, and were distributed by Sujintan. People regard food as their first priority. Farmers make a living by farming, but they are also the group that suffers the most from hunger. Especially in a disaster year like this, no one is more panicked than farmers. Anyone who still has some brains doesn't choose money, but wants grain. At critical moments, food can save lives, but money cannot. In the palace, the emperor was also happy to see baskets of jasper melons and golden fruits. He ordered Manager Yi to cut open a jade melon, hold a large piece in his hands, and eat it happily. The village chief looks much older than in previous years. At this moment, seeing the emperor eating delicious food, the wrinkles on his face were piled together, and he looked more honest. The emperor chatted with him cordially, asking about the drought, the villagers' food and drink, the fruits on the mountains, and the business in the hot spring valley. The village chief didn't hide it, and he just told me if he had any difficulties. Your Majesty, the drought this year is indeed serious. The fruits on the mountain are probably not even half as old as in previous years. The water in the hot spring valley is also much less. In the past, the water flow was as thick as a bucket, but this year it is like a child peeing. Ahem, Manager Yi coughed suddenly, reminding the village chief that it was indecent to speak like this. The village chief was a little confused, and when he realized what he was doing, he felt a little embarrassed and frightened. The emperor put down the melon rind, took the wet cloth and wiped his hands, then glared at Manager Yi, smiled and cursed, "You old slave, don't be too meddlesome, let the village chief say whatever he wants. I have long been tired of listening to civil and military officials talking in official terms just like the village chief. I can only say whatever I have to say." Manager Yi smiled to please. What the emperor said is that this old slave is troublesome. Humph, then you won't get a share of the jade melons this year. You'll be punished if you're so greedy, the emperor joked. However, it was rare that Manager Yi didn't keep his head down. Instead, he raised his chin proudly and said, "The emperor doesn't reward me, and I'm not afraid of it either. I'll go to Highland Palace in a moment. The princess and the princess will definitely take pity on me and give me 2 rewards, a jade melon." The emperor laughed, pointed at Manager Yi and shook his head helplessly. "Look, this old slave has found a backer. He knows that those 2 girls are definitely not short of jade melons, so he won't take me seriously." Everyone also laughed. Lu Biatu was tall and tall, born with a brave spirit and a hearty smile. The emperor noticed him and asked a few more questions. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1036. Chapter 1036, Whose Head Was Kicked by a Donkey. Li Laoer told the truth, mentioning Lu Biatu's previous experience as a bodyguard, the work he was responsible for at Sujintan, and Lu Yang following Ji Yi to kill pirates and Japanese pirates on the Quanzhou beach. The emperor was very pleased and did not hesitate to praise him. He even rewarded Lu Biao with a precious sword. Lu Biatu went crazy with joy. He knelt down and kowtowed. He hugged the sword and said he wanted it to be a family heirloom, which made the emperor laugh again. In the Highland Palace, Jiyan and the 3rd princess were also nibbling the jade melon. They even squeezed the juice and added ice cubes. After one gulp, they were so happy that they almost flew away. The 3rd princess was satisfied with her meal, and blushed at the end, so she asked Kaiun to send someone to deliver 2 jade melons to the Lu family. In the afternoon, Jiyan comforted the 3rd princess and left the palace, going straight to the marquee mansion. She put all the jade melons in the space into the warehouse in the backyard of the home mansion. She kept a small half of them as gifts for the home mansion, and exchanged the larger half for money or medicinal materials and other supplies. The chief steward is a smart man, and he is used to it every year. So, even though he was a little suspicious, he never asked a word. He got busy quickly, giving gifts when he needed to, and contacting buyers when he needed to. Seeing that nothing happened, Ji-Yun returned to Broken Gold Beach. At this time, Broken Gold Beach was simply a small grabbing war. Even if it's dark, I'm still fighting at night. Men, women, old and young in the village all went out to pick melons, count people, load cars, cashiers, and weigh grains, all performing their duties without any fuss. The big stove in the village has been restarted, and the women are washing vegetables and cooking to ensure that the laborers have enough to eat 3 times a day. But no matter how thirsty they were, everyone still insisted on drinking water, and no one touched the jade melon. I really can't bear to part with it. Ji-Yun went back to his old house and changed into half-worn clothes. He walked around the fields and then went to find the village chief. "Grandpa, village chief, we have been working hard for a year. We can't even know what jade melon tastes like. Can we open some jade melons to quench everyone's thirst?" The village chief was heartbroken when he heard it, but when Ji-Yun spoke, he didn't want to refute. So, he shouted, "Everyone, pick out the broken and bruised jade melons, cut them all, and eat them together. The princess feels sorry for everyone. But everyone has to work hard after eating the jade melon, and don't waste a piece of silver for this mouthful." Everyone was happy and laughed in response. The princess still feels sorry for us, and the village chief is more cruel than the rich landlord. Haha, the princess will come back often to support us. The village chief waved his pipe and pot angrily and said with a smile, "At this time, I know it's time to complain to the princess. In the future, if the money is less, don't come to me. Every family has more money. How about buying wine? Isn't it nice? Haha, of course drinking wine tastes good, but eating melon is also refreshing. That's right, we can also eat melons and drink wine." Everyone shared the jade melon and took a big bite, all smiling. Ji-Yun carried a mosquito repellent bag on her waist, but mosquitoes still bumped into her from time to time in the night, which was extremely rampant. Shui Ling and Shui Yun wished they had 8 hands to chase away mosquitoes, for fear that their master would be bitten. The village chief and everyone saw him and quickly chased them away. The village chief shouted, "Princess, please go back quickly. You don't have to worry about the work here. Everyone is used to it and nothing will go wrong." Everyone also shouted, "Yes, princess, please go back quickly. We are thick-skinned and not afraid of mosquitoes." "You can't do it. The little girl has tender skin. If she gets bitten, she may not be able to get rid of it for 7 or 8 days. Let's put a hat on the princess." Ji-Yun also felt that he couldn't help here and was still worrying everyone, so he smiled and said, "Then I'll go back. Everyone should be more tired. Wait until the melon garden is finished. Let's have a running banquet. When the time comes, I'll go to Uncle Huang and ask for dozens of jars of good wine to celebrate for everyone." "Haha, okay, thank you, princess. Then we will also have a taste of royal wine. Oh, I feel so happy just thinking about it. I can't use up all my strength. Come on, I can pick melons from another 2 acres of land." The villagers laughed, and the laughter spread far and wide. Some of the stewards and individual customers waiting in the field, queuing up to buy melons, naturally heard it. They couldn't help but feel a little bit envious and alert in their hearts. Broken Gold Beach was not something they could bully at will. Fair business, nothing is wrong with it. If anyone wants to take advantage, I'm afraid it will definitely not end well. In the same dark night, in the far north of the Yangtze River, the grain transport team traveled day and night and finally arrived at the Northern Expeditionary Army camp. Torches were placed around the camp, and bonfires were burning every few hundred meters. Although it would be very hot to light a fire on such a summer night, it would also light up the camp as bright as day, making it easier for groups of soldiers to patrol. It was a huge pressure to shoulder the life and death of tens of thousands of people and to recover the mountains and rivers. Therefore, the Marquis did not fall asleep until midnight every night. In this case, we caught up with Li Laosi and Muju coming back with the grain transport team. Li Laosi turned sideways and jumped off the horse. Just as the Marquis walked out from the battalion commander, he shouted excitedly, "Master Marquis, look who I brought back." With sharp eyes, the Marquis turned his head and glanced around, and saw the smiling Muju, so he asked, "Why are you here? How is your family?" "Don't worry, Lord Marquis, everything is fine," Muju responded quickly. The Marquis nodded, and just as he was about to order someone to take over the food, Zhang Cheng rushed over. "So," the Marquis ordered, "check the military rations clearly and record them in the book. Starting tomorrow, there is no need to save." "Yes, Lord Marquis," Zhang Cheng agreed with his hands, but did not leave immediately. He looked at Muju with a smile and asked, "Why is Guard Mu here?" "But there is something going on in Kyoto. We have been away for several months, and we really miss home." "Ah." Muju smiled and shook his head, "Don't worry, General Zhang. The family is very nice. I can't wait to stay. I'll go with him to have some fun." Zhang Cheng's eyes flashed, obviously knowing that what he said was false. After all, the journey from Jiangnan to Jiangbei is thousands of miles away. Not only is the journey difficult, but there are also dangers everywhere. Who would take a trip just for fun if his brain was kicked by a donkey? But he didn't care, he just chatted a few words and went to work quickly. Grain needs to be stored in the warehouse, and the grain transportation team also needs people to eat and horses to chew, so all must be carefully arranged. Muju followed the Marquis and Li Laosi into the tent. With a look from the Marquis, the guards lowered the door curtain and surrounded the tent. "Master Marquis, if you have anything to eat, give me some." Muju smiled and found a chair to sit on, his expression full of exhaustion. "This journey has been tough. The drought in the south of the Yangtze River is severe, but there is no shortage of water for people to drink. I didn't expect it to be even worse in the north of the Yangtze River. For 50 or 60 miles, I couldn't find a well or a small river." Li Laosi opened the box in the corner, took out 2 steamed buns and threw them to Muju. "First of all, I will make some dry noodles for you." Muju squeezed the steamed bun in his hand. It was a little hard. He didn't know how many days it had been steamed, and he felt a little sour. "Oh yeah, a military general, eat this fruit belly on weekdays." Seeing that he was holding back his mouth, Li Laosi thought he was disgusted, so he said, "You bastard, you have chosen carefully. It would be good to have steamed buns to eat. If the army rations are not available, the whole battalion will be hungry." Muju hesitated for a moment, then opened the cowhide bag that was slung across his body and took out an oil paper bag. "I still have some of the princess's roasted meat here. 2 updates today." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1037. Chapter 1037. If there are too many coincidences, it's no longer a coincidence. Before he could finish speaking, Li Laosi had already snatched the oil paper bag and spread it directly in front of the Marquis. The two of them didn't say a polite word and started eating directly. Li Laosi shouted happily while eating, "Oh, it's our Fu Niuer's craftsmanship. Only she can make this spicy taste, even her mother can't." The Marquis did not respond, but his men were not slow. In the blink of an eye, the oil paper bag was empty. Muju was holding 2 dry steamed buns. His flesh ached very much, but he did not dare to say. Li Laosi looked back and saw it. He couldn't help but smile and said, "Look at you, why are you so distressed? After victory returns home in triumph, I'll ask Fu Niuer to make a pot and give you some more." After saying that, he still felt that he was not satisfied with licking his mouth, so he asked Muju, "Did you hide something secret? Do you still have it in your bag?" Muju quickly took out the bag and found it was empty. I'm in the food delivery team, so it's hard to bring too many things. Li Laosi felt a little regretful and sat down at the table and complained, Fu Niuer didn't come over. If she were here, there would definitely be no shortage of food. I wonder how this girl is doing in the palace. Even if the emperor and princess treat her well, she is not as comfortable as at home. The of murder who usually makes barbarians frightened immediately turns into a nagging old father when he mentions his daughter. The Marquis was naturally concerned and asked Muju, let's talk about the new capital. How about talking about the princess first? Muju glanced at Li Laosi without leaving any trace, poured water, drank it to his heart's content, and then started talking. For example, there is drought in the south of the Yangtze River, such as the quarrels in the court, such as Li Lao borrowing grain from the family, such as Jiaran and brother Li taking office, such as good news often asking little foxes to deliver news home. Li Laosi and Mr. Ho listened carefully, sometimes frowning, sometimes happy, and finally heaving a sigh of relief. Li Laosi even said with a proud smile, I just said you don't have to worry about home. My second brother is here, Mr. Wen also has many ideas, Fu Niuer is smarter, and Jiaran's wife is also a good one. Nothing will happen for sure. Wrong. The Marquis glared at him without retorting. This is an afterthought, but he is always very nagging. Li Laosi chuckled, touched his nose and went to get dry noodles, and asked the soldiers to help cook them for Muju to eat. Then, he turned around and returned to the tent. Thinking of the people who had robbed the road before, he asked, Boy Mu, what basis do you have for saying that those who robbed the food came from the southwest? Muju thought for a while, then lowered his voice and replied, Master Marquis, fourth master, these people who robbed the army rations are probably from the southwest, and they are from the army. Southwest. Mr. Ho frowned and adjusted his cuffs subconsciously. It was obvious that this possibility was beyond his expectation. Li Laosi said, Master Ho, when I met the grain transport team, they were already on the road. Several traders in the team sprinkled medicine into the well water, and hundreds of them were knocked down. But the traders may not have brought enough medicine, or they may have been merciful. The amount of medicine in the water was very light and would not be fatal. They fired cannons, and a group of people arrived to rob the grain team, but I led the people and dispersed them. The team was well trained and followed strict orders. It was indeed not like a rabble like bandits. Muju said that several traders spoke with the accent of Southwest Fanchinj, but unfortunately they all committed suicide by biting their tongues, and there was no way to investigate the matter. But our Northern Expeditionary Army has no grievances or enmities with the border guards in the southwest, and Prince Lu is very close to our family. Even now that Jiaran is still serving as an official in the southwest, no matter how hard we try, we can't find the reason why the southwest is targeting us. Master Ho's eyes were dark. After thinking about it, he asked Muju, aside from the trader's wrong accent, do you have any other evidence? This matter is of great importance and must be confirmed by ironclad evidence. Muju moved his stool, got closer to Li Laosi and the Marquis, and lowered his voice and said, previously, when a shipwreck of military supplies sank in the river, General Daong and I suspected that there was something hidden in the army. Because those river ships can only be contacted by military personnel, and outsiders cannot get close at all. What's more, the bottom of the ship must be dug out without anyone noticing. But we didn't catch anyone's tricks, we just had suspicions. In order to prevent this from happening again, General Daong used the pretext of an investigation to clear out all the unreliable people in the military camp on the dock. One of the deputy generals was from the Southwest Border Guard Army. He usually behaves in a low-key and cautious manner. This time he was arrested not because he was suspected of being involved in the ship-cutting incident, but because he made a very stupid mistake, as if it was intentional. I guessed that there was something wrong with this man. He was punished and sent back to the southwest to eat sand. It seemed that we helped him return to his hometown. So, I told my uncle, and my uncle had already sent someone to follow me and monitor us all the way. Li Laosi frowned and responded, there are often secondments in various places in the army. Even in the southwest, there are soldiers and generals from our northern expeditionary army. It is really untenable to judge people based on their background. The Marquis did not speak, but Muju nodded in agreement. The fourth master is right, I also know this, so when the second batch of military rations arrived in Jiangbei, I hurriedly followed it. Those people destroyed the military rations for the first time, and my family worked hard to raise them again, and they continued to deliver the second batch within a few days. If the people behind them were unwilling, they would definitely take action. Sure enough, powder was sprinkled on the well water halfway along the way, which led to the traders in the team. I hid under the car and clearly heard their accent from Fanqing, southwest China. 2 times added together cannot be used as evidence, but if there are too many coincidences, it is not a coincidence. The Marquis looked a little solemn, raised his hand to pour the tea, and said nothing for a while. The Lu family guarded the southwest and worked diligently for many years. It can be said that they were extremely loyal. Even the eldest son, Lu Zong, took the initiative to send him to Xindu to study. Neither he nor the emperor ever suspected that the Lu family had second thoughts. But now, as Muju said, if there are too many coincidences, they are definitely no longer coincidences. At this time, Muju coughed twice and added, there is another important clue that may explain the reasons behind all the problems. In other words, it is the Lu family who destroyed the military rations and targeted the Northern Expeditionary Army, not the Lu family. These words were really weird. Both the Marquis and Li Laosi looked at Muju. Muju did not hesitate and continued, Prince Lu Zong was chosen to be the bridegroom and given the marriage to the third princess. Recently, the emperor even intended for Prince Lu and the third princess to get married early. But Prince Lu has someone else in his heart he is devoted to, the princess. What, it's impossible, Li Laosi stood up in anger, he is as old as Jiaran, and is more than 10 years older than Fu Niuer. Who gives him the courage to think about Fu Niuer? He was really angry and crazy. As he spoke, his right hand was already on the waist knife. If Lu Zong is in front of you, I am afraid that your head and neck will be separated immediately. Master Ho's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and his fists were clenched. It's not that he hadn't considered Lu Zong before, but the Li family was harmonious, without any intrigues, quarrels between wives and concubines, or disagreements between concubines and concubines, so the good news was naturally treated with pure joy. With a family like the Lu family, whoever marries into it is bound to have to worry a lot. Moreover, the Lu family is too far away, and neither he nor the Li family can bear the news of marrying far away. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1038. Chapter 1038. The melon is so big that it can't be eaten in one bite. Of course, the most important thing is that Lu Zong is a man with deep knowledge and a gentle appearance, but in fact he knows how to make choices and his methods are clever. It cannot be said that this character is not good, but it is not as reassuring as a sincere person. Who would have thought that Lu Zong would be so enamored with the good news? After the imperial edict granted marriage to the third princess, he would be so entangled that he plotted against the Northern Expeditionary Army. Who else knows about this? Does the princess know? The Marquis gave Li Laosi a hand, motioned him to sit down, and then asked coldly. Muju thought for a while and responded, the eldest young master should know, and so does the uncle. As for the others, I don't know. But Prince Lu occasionally pays too much attention to the princess. With the princess' intelligence, I am afraid that he would have guessed it quickly. You bitch, who gave him the courage? How dare he think about what's in the pot when he's eating from the bowl? Wait until I knock his teeth all over so he can't eat anything. Li Laosi was so angry that he banged the table twice and started thinking about his daughter again. Although the third princess gets along well with Fu Niuer, there are not many royal people who are really generous. If one day she finds out that this from the Lu family likes Fu Niuer or doesn't like her, I'm afraid the third princess won't know how to do it at all. Ask the reason and blame Fu Niuer. He stood up again anxiously. No. We need Fu Niuer to leave the palace immediately and go directly to Quanzhou. The further away the better. The Marquis nodded in rare agreement and said, wait until I write a letter to Fu Niuer and ask her to live in Quanzhou for a while. I don't want to. Mu Yan shakes his head. Oh yeah, Master 4, I am afraid that it will not work. The county owner will not leave. Li Laozi immediately responded, it won't work if she doesn't leave. I'll rush back to Xindu and put her on the ship myself. As long as she, a girl, gets involved in such a bad thing, no matter who is right or wrong, her reputation can be ruined by gossip. At this time, the soldiers reported outside the tent. It turned out that the noodles were cooked. Muju stood up and went to pick up the tray. 2 large pottery bowls were filled with noodles, sprinkled with meat sauce, and fragrant. Muju brought a bowl to Li Laozi and persuaded him, Master 4th, let's eat first. There are many things to do. Don't even think about persuading the princess to go to Quanzhou. The princess will definitely not leave. Li Laozi subconsciously took the noodle bowl, and finally remembered it and shouted in a low voice, what else is going on in Xindu? Isn't it said that everything in Xindu is very good? Is Fu Niuer worried about Broken Gold Beach? Let's talk about it, let's talk about it. Muju laughed dryly, lowered his head and took a big mouthful of noodles. Li Laozi couldn't help it, and he was really hungry, so he lowered his head and started eating with him. The Marquis sat aside and drank tea, waiting for the two of them to finish. Neither of them kept him waiting any longer, and the noodle bowl was empty in the blink of an eye. Li Laozi wiped his lips and urged, hurry up, tell me if there is anything else. Muju burped and glanced at the door. The Marquis understood and responded, don't worry, no one can come near without my order. Muju felt relieved now. When he was about to speak, Li Laozi added, to make a long story short, let's focus on the key points. Muju immediately responded, the emperor was poisoned by the imperial concubine. The emperor allowed the court to elect a prince. The Marquis of Zhenbei rebelled. The emperor is ready to eliminate the imperial concubine and the queen mother at one go. Li Laozi opened his mouth in shock and did not close it for a long time. This is indeed the point, but it's also too heavy. The Marquis almost spilled the tea in his hand and asked, who else knows about the emperor's poisoning? Did the queen mother notice that the Marquis of Zhenbei rebelled? Muju did not dare to be naughty anymore and said in a low voice, only the princess and the third princess know about the emperor's poisoning. Because the concubine chose a chronic poison, the emperor noticed it and used the third princess to be frightened at night to visit Highland Palace, and then invited the imperial hospital. First checked his pulse and discovered that Long was ill. However, the emperor still loved the imperial concubine and the second prince. He even proposed to establish a prince, but the emperor did not object and allowed the courtiers to recommend him. In addition, the Marquis of Zhenbei went in and out of the imperial study at night to talk secretly with the emperor. Only the princess and I knew that the princess had sent a message to my uncle. My uncle felt that the matter was very important and was afraid that it would be unsafe to deliver the secret message, so he let me go. Trip. Although Li Laozi is brave and lacking in strategy, he is definitely not stupid. At this moment, he immediately raised questions. It is inevitable that the Marquis of Zhenbei will rebel. That person is a snob to begin with. Seeing the decline of the Queen Mother, it is expected that he will switch to the Emperor's camp. But why does the imperial concubine want to poison the Emperor? You must know that the Emperor only has one son, the second prince. Sooner or later, the world belongs to the second prince, it's just a few years later. What is the imperial concubine so anxious about? Why has she refused to wait for these years? Muju raised the corners of his mouth and looked at the Marquis with bright eyes. Seeing him like this, the Marquis raised his eyebrows and asked, "You actually know about such a confidential matter?" Muju coughed twice and responded with a smile, "By chance, I happened to find a little clue. I have been in and out of the palace all day long, and it would be strange not to notice it." Li Laozi listened to them playing riddles and couldn't guess, so he felt a little anxious. "What exactly are you talking about?" The Marquis didn't want to hide it from him. After all, the Northern Expeditionary Army was away with tens of thousands of words. If something happened to him, Li Laozi would have to take over the entire army. If he knew more, he would be more cautious. So, he ordered, "It's a very important matter. Don't tell anyone if you've heard about it." Li Laozi nodded quickly, and then the Marquis turned his head and said something in his ear. Li Laozi's eyes widened instantly. If his eye sockets hadn't been so dedicated, his eyeballs would have probably flew out. The melon is too big to be eaten in one bite. Muju saw that his future father-in-law's eyes were as wide as bells, and he had to use all his strength to hold back his laughter. After finally recovering, he did not forget about business. "Marquis, the princess said that although there is no immediate danger to the emperor's life due to his poisoning, it will only take a few months at most, and things will change. So, many things that were not urgent before are now extremely urgent for the emperor. For example, regaining lost territory, unifying the country, and establishing a reputation before and after. Such as eradicating the troubles of the former dynasty and the harem, and clearing the way for the son. Even if the original close relatives are even slightly likely to become an obstacle to the son in the future, they will know mercy. Please, Lord Marquis, please think carefully and put your own safety and that of the Northern Expeditionary Army first in everything." The Marquis was silent for a long time, sighed softly, and nodded. "Go back and tell the princess to reassure her. I don't value eternal fame. Anyone who wants it can take it. But my closest relatives and my generals will never allow anyone to threaten and trample on them." "With your words, I feel relieved." Muju was still a little worried at first, but after hearing these words, he immediately responded happily, "Haha, originally I was ready to take the princess to travel around the world. Now it seems that there is no need to worry." Li Laozi immediately glared and asked, "If you can't live in a good home, why are you wandering around the world?" "At that time, I still have a long knife in my hand, and I will just chop down whoever dares to touch it." Muju chuckled and ran away quickly. "I'm going to see the brothers on the food delivery team." Before the words were spoken, the person had already disappeared. Fortunately, at this time, a drum sound suddenly sounded. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1039. Chapter 1039, Win or Lose on the Battlefield. A soldier stood outside the tent and shouted loudly, "Master Marquis, there is a large group of barbarians rushing into the camp." Li Laozi didn't care about anything, just put his long bow on his back, held a long knife in his hand, got on his horse and led his men out to kill the enemy. The court was in chaos, and he was not familiar with it and was not good at intrigues, but he killed the enemy with a pinch of his fingers. Leave complex matters to smart people like Mr. Ho. Leave it to him to kill the enemy. It just so happened that he had gone out to meet the grain transport team before and hadn't encountered any barbarians for more than 10 days. His long sword was already thirsty. "Let's drink the sword with the blood of barbarians tonight." Muju rushed out from nowhere, also wearing armor and holding a spear in his hand. He ran fast beside his future father-in-law and said loudly, "Four masters, I'm here to help you." Let's see who kills the barbarian tonight, there are so many. What a good boy, you are very brave, but you don't know what you are capable of, Li Laozi laughed. Let's go, let's see the real results on the battlefield. The two men rushed out of the military camp one after another and led the 500 vanguard troops into the night. The sky is too clear during the day, and there are stars everywhere at night. Perhaps I don't want to see the flames of war in the world at this moment, the stars have closed their eyes. In less than half an hour, the barbarians retreated after losing hundreds of lives. Li Laozi and Muju also brought their soldiers back to the camp. 35 were killed in the battle and more than 20 were slightly or seriously injured. Even Li Laozi was scratched on his arm. Jiang Cheng heard that he personally delivered the wound medicine to the main tent and said with a smile, "The princess is very careful." This time the grain truck contained 5 carts of medicinal materials. The finished wound medicine weighed more than 20 kilograms, which is enough for us to last 2 days. It's been months. Li Laozi didn't care about such a small wound. After washing the blood stains in the basin, he put down his sleeves and said, "Leave the medicine for the wounds. If I don't treat my small injury, it will last 3 to 5 days, it's so neat." "How can it be done?" Jiang Cheng disagreed and urged, "The princess is most worried about you and the marquis when she delivers the medicine. If she knew that you were unwilling to use it, the princess would definitely be annoyed and anxious." Li Laozi also smiled when he remembered that his daughter had asked him over and over again before setting off for the expedition. Muju quickly applied medicine to him, and finally wrapped his arm with a white cotton tape. Li Laozi breathed a sigh of relief and praised, "My daughter is really good. She figured out this medicine and it won't hurt so much when she sprinkles it on her." Muju smiled and said, "The fourth master is wrong. This is a prescription that divine Dr. Zhang worked out and prepared in the princess's medicine shop. If divine Dr. Zhang finds out, I'm afraid he will blow his beard and glare again." "Haha," Li Laozi laughed, "don't be afraid, Mr. Zhang is my daughter's master, and his prescriptions are my daughter's. He just knows that, so I just brought him 2 jars of good wine and settled the matter." Everyone also laughed. After a while, Li Laozi and Jiang Cheng were going to have a rest. Jiang Cheng called Muju, "My tent is relatively big. Can you stay with me tonight?" Muju shook his head and replied, "I live here with the marquis. I can just throw a mat at the door and deal with it. If the barbarians attack again at night, I want to kill them again. This kid may not be big, but he's quite murderous." Jiang Cheng smiled and patted him on the shoulder, but didn't insist anymore. "Well, you can sleep here. Get up tomorrow morning and try the food in our camp. Porridge." After saying that, he left with Li Laozi. The marquis went behind the curtain, took out a wolf-skin mattress and threw it to Muju. Muju got into the curtain directly, spread the wolf-skin mattress beside the bed, lay down on it, and yawned loudly. Just when the marquis thought he was going to sleep, he suddenly spoke. "Master Ho, there is no good end for someone who has great achievements. What if that person can't tolerate you? What are you going to do?" "I think there is nothing wrong with leading troops back to Jiangnan and letting Tianwu change his master. At least you won't worry about your loved ones being killed by someone's order. Only when you have the butcher knife in your own hands can you truly feel at ease, right?" The marquis stretched out his hand to lift the quilt, lay down on the bed, and was silent for a long time before responding. "As long as the northern expedition is successful and Jiangbei is recaptured, my wish will be fulfilled. That person wants unparalleled achievements, eternal fame, and even my life, so just take it, it doesn't matter. If it weren't for the adventure I had, I would have died on the road long ago. The rest of my life will be picked up, and I'm not greedy. As for the Li family and other close relatives, if I had not died, they might have been in danger, but if I had died, they would have been extremely safe and even honored. Tianwu has been slaughtered by war for more than 10 years, and I don't want to let Jiangnan become a river of blood just because of me. The injustice or resentment of one person is nothing compared with the peace of millions of people. Muju felt sour in his chest when he heard this. Before coming here, I mentioned these words to the princess, and the princess also said that you would not agree to fight back to Jiangnan. I am still not convinced, but now it seems that the princess understands you. The Marquis laughed silently, feeling very happy when he thought of his daughter who was thousands of miles away. That girl is too smart and can't hide anything from her. After you go back, don't say too much to avoid worrying about her. No one can predict what will happen in the future. As long as there is a glimmer of hope, I will try my best to go back safely. I also want to get her married in person. Muju remained silent, knowing that it would be useless to persuade him. Master Ho, you are the only hero I have ever seen in my life. The Marquis turned over and said in a very calm voice, heroes are admired by the world, but they are destined to be worthy of the world, but they only failed to live up to the expectations and thoughts of their families. That's why I chose you to be the princess's best friend. People. It's because you are unique and not bound by the world. You only have eyes for the closest people and have no righteousness. As a father, I feel most at ease when I entrust my daughter to you. Muju choked up and accepted the praise for the time being. Don't worry, Lord Marquis, the princess is the first in my heart at any time, even you. If we are in danger together with the princess, I will save the princess first. Always remember your words tonight and go to sleep. The Marquis said nothing again, and the camp became quiet, with only the occasional footsteps of patrols coming from outside. No matter what happens in the dark night, whether sad or joyful, the sun will still rise. A new day is coming, the poor are struggling to make ends meet, and the rich are racking their brains to keep their wealth. At another court meeting, the courtiers headed by the Minister of Rights once again asked the emperor to establish a prince as soon as possible. The emperor was still non-committal and asked with a smile, I also know what my dear friends are thinking. Now there are dozens of books piled up on my desk. I will make a decision in the near future. My dear friends, just wait patiently. The Minister of Civil Affairs is an old fox. For some reason, seeing the emperor like this, he always feels unsure. So, he decisively changed the topic and talked about offering sacrifices and praying for rain. As a result, the Minister of Rights still did not give up and immediately followed, please also ask the emperor to appoint a prince as soon as possible. When the prince presides over the rain praying ceremony, he will surely move the heavens and send the descendants to heaven. Ganlin. The emperor still smiled, got up and went back to the back hall, forgetting about the court meeting. The Minister of Official Affairs glanced at the Minister of Rights coldly, said nothing, and took the lead to go out. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 1040. Chapter 1040. The storm is coming. The Minister of Rights was unconvinced and cursed in a low voice, huh, stubborn old man, you are afraid that you will die and won't stand out, so why don't you allow us to speak? Several of his disciples and officials gathered over and tried to persuade him. Don't be angry, sir. The emperor will definitely establish a prince. It's just a matter of sooner or later. That's right, sir. We are also doing it for the inheritance of Tianwu. Even if we are a little impatient, we still have a clear conscience. The other courtiers saw this and walked out silently. The noisy incident of electing the crown prince has come to an end. Those who get the discount are sure that the emperor will adopt it, and they have already had the dream of promotion and wealth in advance. Those who have not won the prize worry about gains and losses. They regret it at one moment, and then persuade themselves to let nature take its course. If they are entangled, eating will not be enjoyable. In the imperial study room, the emperor rubbed his throbbing temples, took a sip of strong tea, and then picked up the list at hand. The list is 3 pages long, and the names on the first page are all marked in red. These are the families and courtiers who have started to fawn over the imperial concubine and the second prince early on, and have completely taken sides. The second page has only recently started to take action. It is commonly known as the grass on the wall, and it has followed the trend of the second prince. On the third page, there are only 7 or 8 names of courtiers. They are indeed loyal, and for Tianwu's consideration, they feel that it is beneficial to establish the prince early. Moreover, he only took advantage of the discount and did not contact the imperial concubine and the second prince in private to seek benefits for himself and his family. The emperor read it carefully, added a few more words, and then said, "Come here, send this list to Zilong Pavilion." Manager Yi was standing not far from the desk, but his head was lowered, as if he didn't hear anything. At this time, an old in grey clothes suddenly appeared from the corner of the room. He stepped forward and took the list with both hands. He then bowed respectfully and returned to the corner of the room, where there was no movement. The emperor drank up the tea in his hand, thought for a while, and called Manager Yi again. "I don't have any taste in my mouth, and I feel very anxious. Go to Highland Palace and see what snacks those 2 girls baked today. Bring me a box." "Yes, Your Majesty. I'll go right now." "Maybe, the princess and the princess are opening jade melons, and I can follow along to satisfy my craving," Manager Yi responded with a smile, looking like he was about to drool, which made the emperor laugh too. "Okay, you can go to Highland Palace to have a full meal, and you won't have to worry about my jade melons every day." Mr. Yi smiled and took a few steps back. After leaving the door, his expression changed. He took 2 young eunuchs and hurried to Highland Palace. In the Highland Palace, several little maids were fetching water to water the flowers. The small wooden kettles evenly sprinkled strings of water drops, falling on the green leaves and petals. The air was filled with a light earthy fragrance, making it so hot. It seems to be a bit cooler at noon. There were 2 rocking chairs under the eaves of the corridor. The third princess and Jiyan each occupied one, and while talking, they put grapes chilled with ice cubes into their mouths, which was extremely comfortable. Kaiyun and Shuiling were sitting on small stools, sharing colored silk threads and planning to weave several knots. The silk threads are all left over from wrapping the rice dumplings, so they can be used to their best advantage. During the Dragon Boat Festival before, Jiyan made a special trip back to Sujintan and took the women in the village to make a lot of rice dumplings and distributed them to the villagers in several villages. As for the rice dumpling gift boxes given to each family, they are all from Bianjian, which is very worry-free. Here in the palace, Jiyan only brought Shuiyun and made dozens of ordinary rice dumplings to cope with the occasion. Yesterday at noon, when the third princess saw the rice cakes on the plate, she suddenly remembered that she wanted to eat rice dumplings, especially those with bean paste filling and egg yolk filling. The workmanship of these 2 things is relatively complicated. Jiyan was lazy and didn't prepare at all this year. In the past few days, I have been a little irritated by the good news. I am worried about Muju, who is away from home. The emperor's poisoning is like a sharp sword hanging over his head. I don't know when it will fall. Everyone is under the sharp sword, and no one dares to say that he will not be hurt. Although my grandma, mother, and others were all sent to Quanzhou, almost all my brothers were no longer in Xindu. But the second uncle, the third uncle, brother Jiawen, brother Mao, Mr. Wen, and even the Lu family and the Jiao family are all relatives, and she can't bear to hurt anyone. This anxiety made it difficult for her to eat well and sleep well. Like a bird that knows the storm is coming, but unable to fight back and with nowhere to hide. At this moment, the third princess wants to eat rice dumplings, which is a good thing. She is busy and has no time to think too much. So, last night I soaked the glutinous rice and prepared the ingredients. This morning Jiyan and Shuiyun quickly made hundreds of rice dumplings and tied them with silk threads of different colors to distinguish the fillings. At this moment, a refreshing smell can be heard in the kitchen. At this moment, Manager Yi stepped into the threshold of Highland Palace. He couldn't help but laugh and said, "It's better to come early than to come by chance. I wonder if the princess and the princess are thinking about something delicious again. This old slave is in luck." The third princess and Jiyan both stood up and invited him to sit together under the eaves of the corridor. The third princess was thinking about her father and asked her about her father's daily routine and food. Mr. Yi answered all questions, which made the third princess feel relieved. At this time, Shuiling ran to the kitchen and brought out a few cooked rice dumplings. Everyone washed their hands and ate rice dumplings together. Mr. Yi smiled and held a salted egg yolk in his hands, stuttering with satisfaction. Jiyan wanted to peel one for him, but he waved his hand and said with a smile, "I am old and dare not eat too much. If I don't change, I will suffer." "Thank you, princess. One is enough for such a delicious rice dumpling." After that, he glanced around and saw that there was no one else around. Both Shuiling and Kaiun were trustworthy, so he said, "The emperor has a bad appetite today," so he sent an old slave over to see if the princess and the princess baked any good snacks. "Bring a box back to the emperor. I never thought that the princess made rice dumplings. How about I reward the old slave with a few more and let the old slave do his job?" Of course, the good news was immediately accepted. The third princess was also very happy and filled the rice dumplings for her father with her own hands. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Manager Yi chatted with Jiyan again. "Princess, I heard that you and the princess played cards very late last night. The young eunuchs and maids in the palace are all looking forward to working in Highland Palace. It is said that Highland Palace is well fed, the master is kind, and the life is lively, but staying up late is not good for a woman's skin, so she should go to bed early tonight." Jiyan's pupils shrank, and the next moment he responded with a smile, "Okay, manager. We had nothing to do last night, so we just played a little more. We will definitely close the door tonight and go to bed early." Manager Yi smiled and nodded, "The princess is smart." Jiyan reluctantly suppressed her pounding chest and called Shuiling to get a jade melon. "General Manager, jade melon quenches your thirst, but it's cold, so it's best not to eat too much." "Oh, thank you so much, princess, for the reward. I'll take note of it." Manager Yi thanked him happily, sat there for a while, and left with his things. The third princess was a little excited and shouted, "We only sent a few rice dumplings. What if the father doesn't like it? Why don't you go out of the palace and go for a walk among the white clouds and pick up more ready-made snacks?" Jiyan quickly stopped, "Forget it, don't look at how big the sun is above your head. If we go out at this time, when we come back, we will be sunburned as black as coal, and we won't be able to survive in a year or two. Do you want to get married? When the time comes, just go out as a black-faced bride." 2 updates today. End of this chapter.